So you're depressed, you're anxious, your mental health is not quite so good. And I hear you say, well, I look towards YouTube and a metaphysical Spenglerian channel to help me, aid me in these issues. And you were wise to do such a thing because in my omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent virtue that I continue to hold, I have some answers for you in the form and shape of a frog. And now you might think, okay, but that's pretty puerile. It's very almost asinine, flippant. Why would I want answers from a frog? Or the other way, this is very cringe and for babies, and things are however you want them to be. But I'm just going to give you answers here, and you've come for answers, and I'm going to give you answers, and you're going to like or you're going to dislike them based on whether or not you think they're cool. But I'm going to tell you anyway. So the idea here is that we'll go through turmoil in our lives, trepidations, tribulations, issues, suffering, all these things, and they cause a range of emotional responses. It can be difficult to traverse these periods, and even the sturdiest, strongest man is going to go through dark times. Nietzsche calls it the abyss. This is necessary. This function absolutely requires you to suffer through it to get a comeuppance or to get better at the end of some retribution. You can see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it can be very dark and gloomy, and sometimes feeling like the light is not worth it, non-existent, things like this. This is fairly normal, I would say. I'm going to exclude legitimate mental illness if your brain is wired incorrectly. What do you want me to do? I can't talk you through that one. You have to take a knock to the noggin and hope that fixes, rewires you somehow, or you just cope with however you cope, or whatever it is you do. Take medicine, whatever it is. This can still help, maybe. It depends on how bad or good you're into mental illness. I think a lot of successful men in history, particularly world history, have had genuine mental illnesses. And so having a depth of energy and schizo sort of decision-making can be useful, actually. But you obviously have to have the right balance, and that chemistry is something beyond even my magic to fix. But we're talking normal people, those with functional brains, and in the way that life throws things at you and you deal with them, and that makes you feel certain ways. Some pretty girl frog has broken your heart, you're going to be sad. Some pretty girl frog likes you, you're going to be happy. But happiness and sadness, I'm sorry to say, are not emotions that I care too much for. They happen to you, and they're nice when they're nice and bad when they're bad, but they're not something I aspire to, hold to, or necessarily recommend that you start to maintain as ideals. I would like to be happy and not like to be sad. I think that's a genuinely poor framing of what are emotions, just reactive to situations and occurrences. I think there are certain transcendent feelings like love and hate, and then those are more important. I don't want to say aspirational. They are emotions and feelings that should pull you in directions more purposefully. But I think genuine happiness and sadness are just something you experience through life. If you feel nothing, you're like depressed and dead inside or whatever, then that's actually to some degree a useful, because now you can go and take risks and you don't care if you fail. And taking risks is always at least physiologically going to give you the impulse of excitement or nervousness, and that alone is going to stimulate something in your dead carcass of a brain. So if that would be my recommendation, if you, I'm genuinely depressed, I feel nothing, I'm just lazy. I mean, these are super fixable things. You just have to do something. Your inaction is not correspondent to your depression. Your depression is just being justified. You're coping with it, and this is just pathetic. We don't do that here. This is not the channel for that. You want to go that's down the hall and to the left with all the weedy losers. And we're the frog channel today. And so on this frog channel, here's the ways that we deal with anxiety, depression, or sadness, anything that you feel like is affecting you negatively, impacting your life. Some people are more sensitive, and this is also fine. I feel as if myself, I was a young lad, I was a very, very sensitive young man, and so things that made me happy made me very happy, and things that made me sad made me very sad, and I would cry. And so I think getting older, you lose a lot of those emotions as a man, particularly when you hit puberty. Testosterone does a lot of funny things to your brain, and particularly your disposition, your demeanor, and how you start to deal with things that don't go your way, And so you have coping mechanisms generally, and you have coping mechanisms. So sometimes losing hurts and you suck it up and you get on with it. You take a salt tablet. I think this is the healthy way for a man to deal with the adversity of his life. There's another way, which is to affect a certain solitude and sconce your heart coldly and say, like, nothing affects me, nothing means anything to me. This is probably the easiest methodology, and I've been there myself, to stop yourself from feeling sadness, pain, and those sort of morose, maudlin senses. But it isn't the most beneficial to you, because sadness and suffering in the negative ways can imbue you and galvanize you, give you impetus to push yourself the positive direction. And then once you get the positive direction, you have self-reinforcement around that. Positive not meaning happy, positive meaning in your life you're striving towards something goal and purposeful. And that's what you can kind of see here. Sorry. Yeah, then we're going to look at those frogs doing something. So the frog in the top right here, the crying frog. We've all been there. Well, maybe I haven't cried in a very long time, but maybe you've been depressed or sad or whatever have you, and down on your in the blues. But then, you've also been the happy frog with your birthday hat and your birthday balloon. So uplifted and necessary. In your halcyon days, you're very ebullient and loving life. So you can generally start to feel like across the spectrum, I like when I'm happy and I hate when I'm sad. So once again, I reinforce here that those things should not make you reinforce the feeling of the thing. So experience sadness as a momentary flit, and vice versa. Experience happiness as just an experience in the moment. Don't try to death grip these things, because the turnaround is always going to wishy-washy, but it's going to affect your ability to deal with the change in your own disposition and demeanor. So if you go, no, now that I'm happy, I want to stay like this forever, this is how a child thinks. This is what a baby wants in their life. It's like, I don't want to ever be sad again. Where's my mummy? Or I'm going to be happy for always. Hopefully it's my birthday every single day of the year. It's Christmas. It's Yule, whatever it is you feel as if it's necessary here. And so you can kind of understand then that naturally humans adapt to their surroundings and environment in this way. And you say nature versus nurture, I think there's a lot of predispositions and preconceptions around how you should feel and think from your parents, and your parents will genetically host you in an environment that you're genetically born into in most ways, unless you're adopted or something. So you can see that there's a very cross-pollination here of who you are and where you're growing up and how you should feel about these things. So an unloving, cold household is going to be very strange to transport into a very warm, loving, friendly one. It's just the nature of human adaptation, though, is that over time you should be able to find your equilibrium. And in that, I think we can all agree that that's the most perspicacious or the most adventitious, the auspicious way to live, is that you find the balance. The balance here, like I said, is reacting how you're supposed to react in environments. Someone tells you that their cat died, you can feel sad. Someone tells you that their cat had a birthday party and loved it, then you can feel happy. And this is how the I don't like cats, but I'm actually allergic to cats, but you start to understand it. So the two, I guess, purposeful uses of this video to maybe harangue you into becoming more balanced, more part of this equilibrium that I'm espousing so heavily here, is to say that action is required of you. The onus is on you to be actionable or actioning things. And when we talk praxeological terms, we're talking about purposeful activity here. What is the thing that you're doing for the purpose that you want it to serve? And I'm saying like, okay, well, I want to go and be healthy and fit. And you go, why? And you say like, it's not really a question of why, you just should be. And this is me telling you, health and fitness isn't this meme, niche, Instagram, influencer style activity. It's the default position you should be in. You should have gone through your adolescence and childhood and teenage years being active, playing sports, being fit, and then you subsequently substitute that for an artificial fitness, which is the gym usually, but I can be outside doing other things, you continue sports or whatever, but as long as you maintain a certain level of health and activity and your vitality even, then you have the possibility of maintaining a balanced persona. If you're a fat, lazy piece of shit, you're going to feel like a fat, lazy piece of shit. I can't fix that with a video about frogs. It's not going to happen. But if you're a fit frog, goes to the gym, uses this time to build up their stature, become stronger, bigger, larger, whatever it have you, then you're going to be more balanced from a default position. You're going to start to sit in the middle always. You're like, you occupy more space because you'll be bigger. But it's also beneficial just from a mental point of view to have this outlet for what your metabolism requires of you, which is the expenditure of energy. You need the mitochondria to be active. This is how it works. You can see that this can be substituted to a degree by things like the sauna or copulation. But it is also necessary that you, on your own, not in a masturbatory way, but in an actual physical engagement way, go and do exercise. And so that's the biggest pillar here around that. You cannot build a house without colonnades, and fitness just in general is that colonnade. I would say specifically being big and strong as a man and being lithe, flexible, nimble, and graceful, balletic is a woman is the two kind of archetypes you build into. And some men will have easier time being alpha dog, and some women will have an easier time being the princess. But in general, I think we can all go into those realms. It's more of a matter of mentality around this. Oh no, I like running marathons. Well, you look like a skinny piece of shit then, because I mean, that can't be solved. You want to run for punishment? Be my guest, but you will engender in you a beta male mentality. No one's running away from it. Like, no one who's fast needs to run away. Take the fight there. Someone who needs to run 52 kilometers or whatever it is nonsense is trying to run away from something. You can call it the battle of, marathon. God, I should have stayed in foot, huh? Anyway, so that's the first pillar, as I say. The second pillar, purposeful in life. Now, it can be business. I think, Western capitalist society, business is the plus ultra of existence, and in your mission to succeed, to be important and successful, which should be your mission, it is the extrinsic life force and affirmation of who you are, not in a lame gammon Jordan Peterson way, but in the truly vital vim essence of Nietzschean overcoming. Say, what am I here for? Given that the fate has allowed me to be here and the norms have designed that I should exist here, what is Wotan intended for me? And then you go for that passion, that striving. So it's power, it's treasure, it's some derivation of these things. Corollary to it, then you'll go for those purposes. And that's very difficult to do, but it requires movement towards things to know if it's working or not. The empiricism of this, you say that the way that we go about testing false positives, negatives, is done through experimentation. It's empiricism. It's the true essence of why you need to be doing things, is to find out what is working and what is not. And that's particularly true for who you are in life. It does not work to sit in your room in the solitude and the darkness doing nothing. And we've all been there. It's not that you can't enjoy it occasionally. I'm saying there can be an equilibrium here and a balance. I don't want you in a nightclub all the time trying to grind up on women. This is very Indian coded behavior and does not lead to a successful life. You want to have the balance, and you come into the world as a Gothic man, then you need to understand what that is from both the role model perspective and the environmentally. So you obviously have to witness and gauge what is reasonable, or like in terms of the behaviors, something that's more modulated around getting somewhere. If you surround yourself with thick heads who are out committing crimes all the time and that's normalized to you, then obviously that's not going to be helpful. And then any type of equilibrium you're trying to achieve here is just going to be swayed out of proportion by that maladaptation. Rather than saying, okay, well, all the people I surround myself with are Silicon Valley strivers, try-hard third worlders who all they care about is success from a monetary perspective in that very materialistic communism way, and then you're also not going to have the ability to balance this thing. It's like, oh no, I'm going to be a tech entrepreneur and I'm going to start at 19 and work 80-hour days every single day until I'm successful and happy. You can clearly see this is delusion, and it's baked into how much tiger mums and those Jewish mums and whatever materialistic cultures push upon their sons, particularly, sometimes also their daughters in that way. You are only successful when X happens. You're only a quality person, son, daughter to me, when you've achieved this. And it's not the Gothic way, and this is why it feels very foreign and alien to us as the Gothic men. You can see this kind of culture in America manifesting only in areas where, once again, the correspondent ethnicities gravitate towards that. On the negative end of the spectrum is where you find the Africans and Mexicans, because they also gravitate towards a different polar here, pulling it. And so the multipolarity is very confusing when you think of Americans and you go like, oh, well, they have all this striver, potentially materialistic essence, and then they, on the other hand, they have this gun crime and thuggish culture, and it's like none of these things are Gothic. They manifest in the most important Gothic country. So once you've normalized yourself, you say, look, what is it that the Gothic man actually has as his band and his spectrum and this modus operandi? How can I go about understanding that encapsulated in what the essence and who I am? And that Gothic spirit is something that you can then hopefully dispel all the spooks from and say, like, what's the pure distilled version of this? Now I'm there, now I'm balanced, and now I have the ability to deal with my life, and I don't have these external influences brainwashing me, indoctrinating me into these other things. I'm fit, because you go to the gym, be massive, and you're either a Viking, or usually probably Viking in spirit, because modern age doesn't have time for nights. And then in that way, you've been able to overcome. You've started the journey and you've gone into the abyss, and then you come out of the other side up that mountain and you realize, okay, no matter what, it was going to require work for the rest of my life, purposeful work towards the goal. And that's the peak, the acme of the mountain. But in doing that, it's very hard to become depressed and anxious. And I can tell you, once again, excluding mental illness, which I am not medicated to help you for, then the prescription is really doing things. And it sounds very reductive and it sounds very plain and simple, but it can also be the understanding that you go from having all these people giving you advice around, oh, you should try this, go to law school, go do this, be a tradie, go work on an oil rig, do all these things. And these are completely missing the point. These are not directionally, these are so like very set and non-typical, atypical for you specifically goals or orientations to say, that's fine. Maybe you find happiness in an oil rig in the middle of the North Sea. But in general, we would like to align ourselves with something that gives us the drive and success and energy. Because when you become who you truly are, then the only things that you respond positively to are those that resonate with your soul. And those are the things that you have to continue to do. You're going to have to do other stuff like laundry, which sucks. And you're going to have to do other stuff like listen to your girlfriend bitching about some random woman that you don't know. And, oh, that sucks, babe. What a shame. But other than those things, which are unfortunately supervening, you'll have the idea that there's a you, and that you is responsible for your actions and the way that you go about your business, and that should build itself up and up and up, and you almost build your own mountain to traverse the even bigger mountain. You're trekking up the side here. A lot of mountain analogies, so hopefully some of you are orienteering or mountaineers. But the idea then, I think, is very basic, but also complex in how to discover it. And Nietzsche knew this. It's not that anything he said was so crazily outlandish or recondite and you have no comprehension of how it's more like he understood that there was a goal to get to, and the way that overcoming the goal was embracing the way that the masculine overman would look like and what he would do in that way. And so I think that is the ultimate probably manifestation of this. That's the mode you want to put yourself into and how you conduct yourself. That there's nothing else more to say to that. Obviously, you can give me your life story in the comments and I can say, well, you specifically should start thinking about doing it like this. And if I'm in Austria and we don't have these options, what should I do and how I feel? And it is always, I think, comprehensible and like you have the ability to receive advice and earnest advice. I would never lie to you. I'm not your mum. But it is to say that you must understand that a lot of this energy is required from you to discover these things on your own, making sure, once again, that you have dispelled the spooks. You don't go and say, like, travel's going to fix me. Traveling without purpose is what women do. I'm going to go to East Asia and see what happens. This is not adventure. This is not struggle. This is not solving. It can be fun. I'm saying don't have fun. I'm not so square and bulbous. But I will say that if you have this drive or instinct for the foreign and unknown, that can manifest in different ways that aren't just traveling like a 90 IQ Geordie. Now, the completely opposite side of the spectrum, and the last thing I'll leave you with here, is that there's this quite infamous one here, 4chan, where it says, all you have to do is just don't care. He's got a champagne glass and you can see him here very happily not caring. And that's all you have to do. And this does work. And this is true to life, something that you'll go through in terms of not caring about things is first of all, it's stoic, and stoicism is not very becoming for the Western man because it's very feminine as an ideology. It's passive, and it's also completely alien to the way that Gothic man understands elan vital and life force and power. So I would stray away from this. It can be obviously quite humorous and then also situationally useful. And we say like not caring about things you can't change makes you stronger. And worrying makes you suffer twice, for instance, because worrying about something you can't fix is just silly. It's once again, it's very feminine. It's not something you should be trying to embody as one of your characteristics. The warrior is never an anxious man, is never seen as something as a stalwart and say hardy adventurer or king or something. You have a tempestuous woman doing all these flitting nonsensical things with the whims of whatever is currently happening. But it's to say that some things you should just not care about, and it does apply to some things. If it's like, oh well, this is going to happen to my country and my state, I'm going to get very nervous and rack myself to death with the thoughts of these things. I mean, you're just being silly, right? These things aren't going to affect you like that. Now, they might over the long term start to have implications for you personally, specifically, and then you can start to worry. But worry should always be correspondent to a problem that can be fixed and solved. This is the idea of being a man in that way, or at least being masculine in that way. Women can be problem solvers. Let's not forget. But they can also be problem creators. So giving get. So you have the idea that maybe woman is God in that way, creating problems and helping you fix them. But the idea then that you have these pillars, you're going to be this substantial man doing not performative but very purposeful things in that way, and it's not a hermetic, but it is, I'd say, very sensible, and hopefully you're stolid and obdurate enough to push through the downs and the ups and get to a position where you can have the equilibrium. And now from that equipoise, you can transform yourself into ideally the Übermensch, but it does start there. And so all of you worrying with your mental illnesses and neuroticism, that's for the left, it's for the losers. And you let them eat themselves to death on this, and you'll overcome them. You just step over and start to climb that mountain as the true frog who's mountaineering his way to the apex of the lion's den, but of the overseeing of all of humanity now that you're the king.